Circuit City is done. Linens and Things is going under. Best Buy is saying that they're closing stores. I mean, the big three automobile companies are asking for bailouts that they won't get. They're asking for concessions from the UAW union. UAW just signed their contract. Same thing up here with the CAW, just signed their contracts. Now, they're going to ask for basically complete concessions on everything they want. And I hope the unions stand up and say no, but those automobile companies are going to go under. Look at the pulp and paper industry that has taken place in BC and how it's been decimated. And when it does revitalize, you'll have, 5 or 6 super mills, instead of, hundreds of mills in the communities. So the Canadian population has need to be aware that this financial crisis is going to hit us hard. And I want them to understand that, you have Gerald Talante from Trends Research Institute of the United States, who predicted the fall of the Soviet Union, who predicted the fall of the ruby, who said watch out to Argentina, who was on Fox, and I don't like Fox because they like to spin stuff, but was on Fox, who basically said, look, you're going to see food riots in the United States. You're going to see states trying to concede. You already have that right now with Oklahoma trying to secede from the federal government in the United States, saying, look, we don't want a piece of your Real ID Act. We don't want anything to do with the North American Union. We'll go and form our own country. Thank you very much. So, we're watching right now a very historical time, and the media, whether it be because of the people that are placing ads, the advertisers, or the owners, are not actually telling us, the complete truth at what's going to happen. The economy that we know it today is not going to be the same economy, 2 or 3 years down the road. And there's reasons for that, Christmas time will not be about mass consumption of goods, because most of us will not be able to afford it. We'll be working at retail jobs or the service industry. Some of us will get public sector jobs, but most of us will be toiling at Walmart, and jobs like that. So, Christmas will become, how do we put food on our table for our family, and what crafts can we make, and how big of a garden can we grow, and what kind of ungenetically modified seeds can we put in there, and how do we protect our soil and crops from the chemtrails over top of us. These are the issues that should be addressed on mainstream press, and we're totally being lied to. And it's programs and radio DJs like yourself, Reg, who are not afraid to address these issues honestly and talk about it, that allow people like myself, inspiration to keep going, because we need more people to stop being afraid and stand up and talk about it. Not being afraid of being labeled, whatever the label is. Politics is a left and right paradigm, and every party is the same, and they all work for the same people. And for those of you that don't believe it, look at what happened the last time the Conservatives got elected. What's his name from Burnaby? I can't remember his name. He worked on SPP with Kingsley. It was the ex-Canfor executive. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Do you know who I'm talking about, Reg?
David Emerson?
David Emerson, thank you very much. When he was with the Liberal Party, he was the Minister of Trade, and he worked on the SPP deal. The moment after the election was over and the Conservatives won, what did he do? He crossed the floor and started to work as a Conservative. That right there should tell the people we do not have a true political party system in this country. Paul Martin signed the SPP. Stephen Harper ran on a pro-Canadian election, and then he continues the program, and then the Liberals say, no, that's not what we intended. How do you say that when it's the exact same thing that you signed? It's the exact same deal that you pushed forward. We need to understand as Canadians and neighbors, and brothers, and regardless of our religious differences, that we're all in this fight together. And we need people like yourself to keep talking about it and giving people like myself the platform to talk about this issue, because it's going to affect all of us. They're not talking about how the Scotiabank is running out of money and there's potential for bank runs because they're heavily invested in the subprime market. You don't hear anyone talking about in mainstream Canadian press that the FBI is investigating the Royal Bank as part of their investigation into the subprime market fraud, because they were heavily involved. And that should be covered. There should be outrage in the Canadian public, but there is an outrage because we've been programmed to believe that, no, let's just watch Canadian Idol or American Idol, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're one person, and you can't stop it because you're just one person. No. For evil to succeed, all it takes is for good men to do nothing. And it's time that the good men and women of Canada stand up and say, you know what, we've had enough. We've had enough of this industry based on war. We've had enough of this media based on lies. We've had enough based on this consumerism that we can't maintain, this lifestyle that we can't uphold. We're tired of watching people live on the streets. We know that money is something that you just print, you make it up. It's not backed by anything, so there's no reason why people should be on the streets. We've had enough as Canadians. That's not what our country means to us, and that's not what we want to represent across the board. And we need to make our politicians way more accountable than they are now. And we need people to stand up and demand that there be answers. I mean, do you realize that if we had a real investigation into 9/11, okay, the potential for legislation that has been passed to be thrown about is huge. You would lose the Patriot Act because you'd have no grounds for it. You would lose Homeland Security because you would have no grounds for it. You would lose the Public Safety Act because you'd have no grounds for it. There would be no war on terror because you would have no grounds for it. The Canadian military and the American military would have to admit that the reason why our troops are in Afghanistan are because of the oil and the opium. Or else they'd be pulling them out because there'd be no war on terror because you'd have to admit that it's not true. The CIA would have to admit that Osama bin Laden, his real name is Timothy Osman, and was a CIA op who worked for the Mujahideen and was actually a gun runner during the Afghanistan war for the CIA. And there's pictures of Signal Brzezinski standing beside Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, and Signal Brzezinski is now Barack Obama's foreign affairs advisor. So what kind of world do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a world where people stand up, or do we want to live in a world where we're perpetually lied to and we buy it like sheep?
Well, James, my co-host Tanya wants to ask you a question. Go ahead, Tanya.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
I'm Reg's sometimes co-host. I don't know, I have lots of questions, but you just kind of brought to my mind, you're talking about people kind of, having to band together in their communities, grow gardens and kind of, do things a little bit differently. And so do you think that that's what's happening, the economic collapse, do you think in some ways it can be turned into a positive thing, a slowing down of economic growth and kind of a chance for people to stand back and really think about what kind of world they want to live in?
Exactly. I thank you for asking that. And yes, 100%. I think we need to look at what kind of a world do we want our grandkids and our kids to inhabit. I have two young kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, or 7. She turned 7 last night. And I have a 2-year-old. He turns 3 in December. And when I was younger, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, I would see people like Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush Sr. and, stand up, and Brian Mulroney on, and we're thinking of the children of the future, and this is, for our kids and our grandkids. Well, you know what? I'm 30. And I'm looking at the world and I'm thinking, there's a problem. And yes, we do need to change the way we live. There should be no reason why goods are manufactured in China and shipped halfway around the world back to us just to maintain lower labor costs and lower standards. I mean, we need, as a civilization, to look at the way we live. That doesn't mean we get rid of flying around the world or transportation, but there should be more emphasis on growing foods locally. Everybody should have a farm. Everybody should have a garden, like the neighbors. You walk around people's neighborhoods, you see all this grass. What good is grass? You can't eat it. You can't do anything with it. Put a garden in your front yard or in your backyard, or, all these roofs. Why are we not having green roofs or solar panels on all these, houses? I think we need to wait to look at this and decide what we want. And it's not.
Hello? Oh.
People say, this is the way it's going to be because we think it's the best. Well, what makes them think it's been the best? They've been running the world for 2,000 years, and all we've had is perpetual war, poverty, and problems. So there's got to be another approach. The common person is never brought in, and I'm not saying average, I'm saying common. And there's a difference between the two words. I think